Hello, LinkedIn. Hopefully this is working. StreamYard and LinkedIn were having some technical difficulties. Thank you for joining me today. I'm sorry that it is starting a little late. If you are here and watching this, feel free to leave a comment down below. If for no other reason, to let me know that LinkedIn is actually streaming this and I am not actually talking into a void. This is my ongoing series on HubSpot lead scoring. The purpose of this series is that HubSpot is retiring, sunsetting their lead score property fields, and people will now have to switch over to HubSpot's new lead scoring app or customer scoring health score app, depending on if you're using Marketing Hub or Service Hub. And so today I wanted to jump on and talk about some workarounds in two ways. The first way is what is happening if you're in the old tool, workarounds that are now solved in the new tool, and then also some workarounds that I am doing in the new tool. So let's go ahead and jump in. I'm already running late, so we'll just go ahead and dive in. So this is the old scoring property, and you will see that is being sunset on August 31st, 2025. So you have a little bit of time, but I'm starting to think through this ahead of time for many of my clients because one, the scoring will need to change a little bit. We'll talk about some of those ways, but also when's the last time you revisited your scoring? Maybe it was really recently and you rebuilt it in the old tool, and that's all fine. And then maybe you are just moving it to the new one. But if you're like me and you set it up and then maybe you just let it go on for a little while, it's a really good opportunity to revisit it now anyway. So the first workaround I want to talk about is our negatives. Our negative 500 for email hard bounce reason is known. Maybe negative 500 if they're at a customer account or if they're at a competitor account, an internal email, anything like that. And what you'd see in a lot of portals were that people were using this negative score, not really to negative the score, but to exclude people from getting a score at all. And maybe it was negative 500, maybe it was negative 200, whatever your preferred negative scoring was. But really the intention here was not to lower scores, but it was really just to remove people from the scores at all. So in the new scoring app, if you go under, this is a company score. If you're doing a contact score, this tab will be contacts, I believe. But right up here, we can see who we would like to score. And you can see in this specific account, I already have a list set up of account score exclusions. So these for this account are going to be partners, internal accounts, and just really businesses that are just out of our ICP. And we're removing them from the scores so that our sales team doesn't have any distractions where they are trying to they get these score-based leads in and they're not really accurate or relevant leads. So that is one of my favorite workarounds in the new tool. The second workaround was, you will see here, I have number of page views greater than equal to 5. I'll have, but oftentimes, actually this one is okay. Number of sessions is equal to 3. This one's kind of a little weird actually. But what you'd often see is number of sessions is equal to 1, score 1. Click save. Then you'd see clone number of sessions is equal to 2, score 2. Click save all over the place. Number of sessions is equal to 3, and then so on. Or maybe you'll finally say greater than or equal to, you'll kind of tap out at some point. It was very annoying. It was just super annoying all the time. Um, I can't I can't put it a different way other than saying it was really annoying. And I kept hearing that every time I'd set up a new score, especially if it's a new HubSpot customer, they'd be like so excited to set up their scoring. And then they'd be like, okay, for every visit, we want to give them 1 point, or for every email that they click, we want to give them 2 points. And I'd say, okay, great. Um, what's at what point do you want to stop? Because I would go sick and we would eventually reach a limit inside the tool. One of the things I really like about the new tool is if you do, what is this one? Form submission. So if you do a score that is event based, for example, this form submission, I can score every time. So I can the same way. Web events, I think it's going to be pages visited, and then I can filter those down. I can say only if the URL path contains services or whatever. And then I can score 1 point each time. And there are some new time frame ones now. I can also have a decay score. So in this case, I already have this set up to remove all of the scores after 3 months. So that's one way that I am already kind of working towards that. But I can also limit to, and I can limit to 1, I can limit it to 5, I can limit it to 100. It all is going to depend on what my score limit is, but I can keep adding on to that. The one thing I would caution you of, or a couple things I would caution you of. The first thing is not to give people 100 points if they visited your services page 100 times. Um, Even if they have, there is a point where those points have diminishing value. Yes, it's super helpful to know that they visited your services page or maybe your pricing page. It's also super interesting to see if they visited it a couple times. That's definitely a signal that they're shopping or they're interested. If they visited 100 times, then at some point you're like, they're not shopping anymore. Maybe they're doing research. I do that for a lot of my clients. I might not be on a competitor domain, but I might be visiting your pricing page to figure out what your pricing is like. And I might be visiting 100 times, but I'm not ever going to buy. So there is a point of diminishing return there. So just be considerate of that and be aware of that. I say that lead scoring is a living and breathing. It's something you should always be adapting and changing. As their sales team says, hey, there's too many leads. Hey, we don't have enough. So just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. And the other thing is you can score on a lot of things. Just remember what actually is important. The pages visited, for example, if I have no filter on this, we're going to get people that visited our blog. Maybe they're students who just happen to be studying something related to your field and they're visiting your website a lot. Maybe those blogs are not worth as much as the pricing page and things like that. So consider your limits there. And then there's also the ability to score on marketing emails. I do a lot of marketing emails. I do think it's important to I do think it's important to incorporate those marketing emails in your scores. I think marketing emails do still have a time and a place. People will disagree with me there, but make sure you're staying aware of what you're scoring on. Giving them points for every email delivered may not be the most useful, especially if you're using this for engaged lead scoring. Just because they got an email delivered doesn't necessarily mean that they're engaged. If they opened an email, if they clicked a link in an email, these are going to show a little more engagement, but we have a lot of email privacy laws, privacy features changing, that some of these metrics are not as reliable as they used to be. So don't put too much stake in those. Sometimes they're underreported, sometimes they're overreported. But just be aware of kind of how that plays in the journey, but don't put too much effort onto things that we don't have reliable tracking for, whatever you don't have reliable tracking for. All right, I digress. I started late, so I need to keep moving. Now let's talk a little bit about some workarounds I've been doing in the new tool. I will say, first and foremost, there is a lot of things that have come out since the tool was originally released. I had some complaints originally that I am now rolling back, and I hope to have even fewer complaints in the future. With that being said, the biggest workaround I am currently applying is an and criteria. So in the old tool, I was able to add criteria to say contact first name is known and last name is known, and give a score based on that. In the new tool right now, as I'm speaking to you, this may not be true always. I can't say and in here. I can give different scores for different properties. Why did I do it like that? Why did I do it like that? First name is known. Last name is known. So I can give us 1 point for each of those, but I can't say only give a point if both of those are true. So a couple of ways I can work around this. The first option is, let's say if this was a score of 2, for example, I could give 1 point for first name and 1 point for last name. That would work. That would work perfectly fine. So, however, that may not be what I was trying to achieve with this score. I really wanted to only see people who both of those were true for. In that case, you'll have to add list membership criteria. And the reason it's not letting me add that here is this is an associated object. This is a company score. If I was on a contact score, I would have the ability to. However, even there, I can add a list membership. Belongs to all of, and let me just make a little list. And I'm going to show you how this would still be true if I was doing a associated object. So I'm doing a company score right now, and I only want to give a score if there is save. Okay, so now I'm only going to look at companies who have a contact with a first name known and a last name known. And it's going to show up there. And now I can add a point for that using that and criteria. I acknowledge it's kind of an annoying workaround. And I have one client in particular who I am currently rebuilding their score for, and we're doing a lot of lists. And I am even debating, like, do I wait? Is this a feature that's coming? I don't have those answers. If someone does have those answers, let me know. Let me know when an and criteria will be added so I can know whether or not I should be rebuilding this or not. But that is definitely the biggest and workaround that I'm running into most frequently as I rebuild scores. The other workaround is if you are not on an enterprise account, each score you build is either an engagement score or a fit score. The I will say the old score was basically a fit score. So if your intention is to just rebuild the old score, you're going to want to choose a contact fit score because the way the old score worked was just a list of properties and what they were filled out as. The engagement score is the newer part of the score. This is the part of the score that is a little more dynamic. That first, or the second example I gave, where we can now add a point for each page visited. I can do that now with the engagement score, um, and I can add on. However, if I wanted to just rebuild what I already had going, where I was said each number of sessions is equal to 2, 1, and then 3, I could build that with the fit score. So all of that to say, um, do you need more than one score? Maybe. If you don't have an enterprise account, you can create two different scores, the fit score to do your properties and an engagement score to do your engagements. I actually even often break those out even more details. I'll make a fit score for company fit versus contact fit. And I will score the company separately than the contacts, and then I'll add those scores together. I'll also do this in engagement. I'll do email engagement versus website engagement and maybe even like form engagement. The benefit of that is I can see exactly why and where people are scoring, and I have a little bit more flexibility and insight into exactly what they did without having to dig into the score to see exactly what they did. If you are like me and like having that as extra flexibility, or if you are not on an enterprise account and you want to use the engagement score and the fit score together, how I am working around that, both intentionally and unintentionally, is by creating a calculated field. I'll usually call this total score. And the object type should be the same object type that you're scoring based on. And then you can spell calculation. And just do a custom calculation. On output, it should be the number. And then here, you'll just input your scores. So if that is one of my scores, which I recently rebuilt, and this is another score that I recently rebuilt, this new field will add all of my scores together and output my what I call a total score. I prefer this because again, I don't like to have all of my fields really in one score. When I do that, I can't see without going into the scoring criteria and testing why they scored that way. However, if I break each of my scores out, I can see, okay, their ICP score fit is a 10. So they're the maxed out with the ICP score. The company is not such a great fit, even though the contact might be. But I can see that they've opened a ton of emails. We have a lot of email engagement because their email score is really high. Now, if only we could get them to submit a form, then we would be able to push them over to sales. And that because their form score is very low. Something like that gives me a lot more context very quickly when I can see it all at a glance. I've talked a lot about that with Emerson, who actually introduced that to me before the new scoring app was introduced. Happy to revisit that again too, if that's something interesting. But for now, let me know what problems you're having in the old tool, in the in the new tool, moving over, and I'm happy to do another session. Hoping to bring back lead scoring Mondays and talk a little bit more with you all as we get closer and closer to that August 31st deadline and get more people moving to the new tool more quickly. Until next time. Thank you guys.